Got it? Yeah, it's working. All right, so Chapter 6, if you've looked at the title, it is a natural progression to move from fractions into decimals and then move on into percentages. All right? So the next 3 chapters are all basically about percentages and how they work in business. Realize, folks, that really the rest of this class is all percentages, okay? I mean, that's sort of the goal of this class, is to make sure you have a solid basis on dealing with percents, all right? So really, we're going to do this over and over again. We're just going to throw different real-world scenarios that are applying the use of percentages, okay? So we'll start with some basic ones, and then we get into more complicated ones as we move along. All right, so 50% is the same as 1/2, right? My question to you is, why? Why is 100 important? Why? There has to be some real solid, hardcore basis for why 50% is 1/2. Do you guys know what the number 50 is? Hopefully, yes. You guys know what the fraction 1/2 is. So really what I need you guys to do is to translate this symbol out of 100, right? That's the key, that the percent symbol means in English out of 100. And what do we do when we see the phrase out of? We divide, right? So 50 out of 100 is the same mathematically as 50 divided by 100. And what is 50 divided by 100? If you punch it in your calculator, it's going to tell you it's 0.5. If you had your calculator turned on to fraction only, it would tell you 1/2. Because you guys know, because of the last chapters, that 0.5 or 5/10 and 1/2 are the same thing. All right? So what I want to point off right off the bat is that this is flat out wrong. Okay? I see this happen, 2 or 3 people will just do it. No, okay? This is 50%. This is 1/2 of a percent. 1/2 of a percent is a really small amount. 50%, on the other hand, is a half of something, okay? So please, 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 when you translate 50% into a decimal, lose the percent sign, okay? That percent sign cannot be there, okay? If you write the percent down there, I am going to mark it wrong, and I'm going to mark it all wrong, and I will bang my head on the wall in my house and make the hole there bigger. Well, she's already put a pillow over it, so at least now it doesn't cause as much brain damage as it did before. Anyways, okay, so please, 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 pretty please, when you translate these things into a decimal, make sure that you remove the percentage sign. All right. Whew. So, why do we do this? Why do we care? Why do we care that 50% is the same as 0.5? But why? I mean, why do we care? I mean, what are you going to do with 50%? If you say something is 50% off, do you multiply that number by 50? You divide it by 50? You cut the number in half, right? You actually multiply by a half, right? Or what you do is you multiply by 0.5, right? When you use percentages, you never actually use that number, ever, right? What you use is this one. So whenever you go to apply the use of percentages, right, you never use the 50 or the 10% or the 25%. You never use that 25, right? If somebody tells you something is 25% off, are you going to do something with 25? No, you guys are going to look at 25% and say, what is 25%? That's 1/4. You guys are going to divide by 4 or technically multiply by 1/4, right? Because you know that 25% is the same as 1/4, okay? So what I'm getting at is that when you go to use percentage signs, when it's not something that you're shopping for or that's a really obvious percentage number, don't use the percentage number. Convert the percent into a decimal and then use that number, okay? That's what you do when you utilize percentages, all right? So one of the things that you have to be able to do is to take percentages and convert them into decimals. And you should, just in case, because we've already been doing this, also be able to put them into fractions. So the first one, let's do the nice easy one, right? So if I have 50%, right, how would you write 50% as a decimal? 0.5. And how would you write 0.5 as a fraction? 1/2. Now, if you wanted to tell me that this is really 5/10, which then simplifies into 1/2, that'd be cool. Because what happens if I give you something like 70%? 0.7. 7/10, right? So don't do something weird like tell me that this is 7/2.
How do they do it, huh?
I've seen it. So you don't have to write this as 5/10 and then simplify it, but maybe not a bad idea. All right. So what about say 9%? 0.09, please be careful with that. So many times I see 9% turn into 0.9. That's 90%, right? Again, dividing by 100. When you divide by 100, what do? Decimal 2 to the left, right? So here's where the decimal is. Technically, we move it 1, 2 times. There's a 0 in front of that. How do I write this number as a fraction? Yes, this is 9/100. Again, why I want you to get in the habit, right? So, just for safety's sake, let's suppose that I give 150% every day. Isn't that what all the football players say? I gave 150% today, right? Whatever. What is 150%? How do you write that as a decimal? Yes, 1.5, because it's not like you do anything different. Here's the decimal, move it 2 to the left. How do you write 1.5 as a fraction? 1 5/10, which you simplify to 1.5. If you want to write this as 15/10 and then simplify it to 3/2, that's okay too. I'm okay with mixed numbers or improper fractions, right? Only last test did I care about the difference between the two. After that test, now either of these answers, I'm okay with it, all right? Improper or mixed is okay. So, if I give 2,000%, here's the decimal. 20. You can if you want. You could put 20.00 if it made you happy, but you don't need to. right? It's not wrong. How do you write 20 as a fraction? 20. If you want to, you could write it as 20 over 1 if it made you happy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with 20 over 1. It's just an improper fraction. But 20 as a fraction, folks, is just 20, right? The nice thing about numbers is that our whole numbers, they're fractions by themselves. They're just a mixed fraction with no fraction piece, okay? No biggie. Now, that's dealing with percentages. Now, let's try one more just to be safe. Let's go with, say, 15%. 0.15. 15 over how many? 15 over 100, and you wouldn't leave it like that, right? You would reduce it and tell me that this is 3/20. Folks, you will get to use your calculator on the next test. If you take out your calculator and punch in the fraction 15 over 100 and hit the equal sign, it will come back not as 15/100ths, but as 3/20ths. The little A, B over C button. Okay? You get this forever from now on, okay? Only that first test do I ever deny you access to this particular device. So you will see fractions still. If you can work fractions off of this thing, your life will be potentially a little bit easier. But you don't have to make it easier if you don't want to. It's okay. All right, so now, I could, if I want to, though, start somewhere else other than the percentage bar, right? I could say, well, what happens if I have 1/4? 1/4 as a decimal, 0.25. Again, you have your calculator for these things. 1/4, you guys know how to punch that in your calculator. 1 divided by 4. Whatever it spits out, write it the frick down, okay? 0.25, convert that into a percentage. Yes, please remember when you're going this direction, instead of moving the decimal to the left, you move it to the right. So to add a percent sign, you multiply by 100. 25%. So your decimal is just going to hop back and forth, right? So what if I have 27 thousandths? Again, you have your calculators. Use them. What does your calculator spit at you? 0.027. Write it down. Right? 27 divided by 1,000. Straight up use the division sign instead of the fraction sign. They're the same. Now convert that into a percent. Again, move it 2 to the right to add a percentage sign. Please be clear where your decimal points are so that I can tell. All right, so what if I had just 0.3? Again, please be careful when I give you the decimal. Again, you move it twice. This is 30%, right? Multiplying by 100. How do you write 0.3 as a fraction? Read it the correct way. That's 3/10. All right, now I'm going to show you something. This one makes me crazy sometimes, just so that you know. Let's say I have 2 4/5 of a percent. So I have a savings account at the University of Iowa Credit Union that is paying me 2 4/5% interest on my money, which, if you've looked around, that's pretty high given today's economy. What is the decimal representation of my 2 4/5 of a percent? How would you do it? You could if you wanted to. That's one way. Well, what is 4/5? 4/5. What is 4/5? 80, right? It's 8. This is 2.8, right? So is my decimal 2.8? Why not? Because it's 2.8%, right? This is a classic student mistake. I guarantee you that 25% of you on the test, when I put this number down here, are going to write 2.8 here. This, it is 2.8, but it is 2.8%. The percent sign's still there. What do you got to do to get rid of the percent sign? Move the decimal 2, all right? So yes, it is 2.8%, but then 0.028. Divide that 2.8 by 100. How do you write 0.028 as a fraction? 28 over 1,000, because this is 28 thousandths. You would not leave that like that. No, you would simplify. And by all means, there's no reason to try and do it all in one step. Do it in the easy way, right? Take 2's out, one after another, until you get to a fraction where the numerator doesn't have any more 2's, right? You could have done it in one step by using 4, but there's nothing wrong with taking your time. Dividing by 2, it's easy. Or it's easier than dividing by 4. Let's put it that way. All right. Ready for a fun one? That one was kind of fun. I like that one. But this one I like as well. So I got a third off on my purchase. Again, you guys know what 1/3 is, because you have a calculator. Does it stop there? 3, 3, 3, 3. How many 3's do I need to write down? Yeah. I can't just, in theory, I could write 1 3 down, but what do I have to do with that 3? Thank you. Okay? So while your calculator will tell you that 1/3 is 0.333333333, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. Most calculators have a display of 8, right? Don't write that number down, okay? So sometimes your calculator is not absolutely right, because your calculator doesn't know how to show an infinite number of numbers. It also doesn't know how to translate into the bar notation unless you spend $200 or $300 on a calculator, which is silly. You guys are smarter than that. You know the 3 is going to go on and on and on. Make sure you tell me, okay? It's okay if there's 2 3's in there. For this particular problem. Now, how do I convert this? Don't tell me it's 33%, right? Don't tell me it's 33.3%. 33.33%? 33.333%? And remember that point through the bar of this is 0.33333333333333333333333333333. How do I convert this to a percentage? Move the decimal 2 to the right. That's what we've been doing, right? So move it 2 to the right. So when you have numbers to the left of the decimal, you always have to write them out, okay? So you have to write this out as 33. But now, what are happening to all those 3's? Do they ever stop? No. How am I going to write it? Right? And then you get to put your percent sign next to it, all right? $33% is cheating you, right? If you only take 33% off, you're missing the 0.3 repeating percent. You're gonna give away that money? Dude, let me be your banker. All right, so one possible answer for this is to do this, right? Now, how many banking documents have you gotten where you've had a number with a line over it, on it? Because if you saw this on a banking document, right, what would you think that number over the 3 was? You'd probably underline the word above the 33.3, right? Because that's what it's going to look like, right? It looks like an underline on the words above me. Right? But would a banker ever cheat itself out of a penny? No, a bank is never going to round this crap off, folks, ever, okay? Banks have to divide by 12 all the time, right? Because that's what your monthly mortgage is. Do you think they round 1/12 off and cheat themselves out of money? Hell no. All right? They always go exactly, right? So my question to you then is, if the bank had to write this number out, how would they write it? Would they put all those 3s in there forever and ever and ever? Oh, no, they don't round anything. Banks never round anything, folks, ever, unless they tell you, all right? If they don't say they're rounding it, it has to be exact. And if it's not, very rarely will a bank say it's rounding anything. So how would they write this number, right? Well, what is 0.3 repeating over and over and over and over and over and over and over again? It's a third, exactly. So what would they replace the 0.3 repeating with? 33 1/3%. So if someone only charged you 33%, they'd be cheating you, or you would be cheating them, out of 1/3%, which may not seem like a big deal, but again, remember how much debt we're in, folks? $17 trillion. If you take $17 trillion and multiply by 1/3%, that's basically $60 billion. Are you going to piss away $60 billion? The government does that at a drop of a hat, but hopefully they don't do it very often, all right? So that's the trick to dealing with this. I am perfectly happy with this answer, though, right? I'm not a bank, but I do want numbers exact, okay? So you'd better be able to give me 33.3 with a bar over it percentage. This, converting it into a fraction, though, that's extra credit, all right? If you ever convert your repeating decimal into a fraction, I throw you an extra point, okay? But this is the minimum that you have to be able to do. All right. So, what if I gave you a decimal of 10.2? How do we go from here to the percent? Which way are we going to move it? Left, right, left? Use the other ones as an example if you can't remember off the top of your head. We're moving it to the right because we're multiplying by 100 to get the percent sign on there. Please be careful. 1,020%. Weird, but that's the way it works. 10.2 as a fraction. Technically, it's 10 2/10, which you would then simplify to 10 1/5. Right, so realize that normally when we talk percentages, more times than not, you guys have been dealing with percentages that are between 0 and 100. Because you're normally buying things that are somewhere between 5 and 75 or 85% off, right? In the real world, percentages can be more than 100 on a regular basis, right? So please don't limit yourself to percentages only being between 0 and 100. That tends to drive students a little bit batty, but you still got to deal with it. All right, so let's try one more here. Down here in the very bottom of the board. I apologize for that. 0.83 repeating, right? So 5, 6, when you punch it in your calculator, that's what your calculator spits out, right? How are you going to write that number? Be careful. All right, so here's 0.83 with the bar over the 3, right? All right, now how are we going to write that as a percentage? Yeah, right. Be careful with that, right? So remember, only the 3 is repeating. So when you move the decimal 2 to the right, however many 3s we need, that's our percent. And what's always repeating? Just the 3. So you do want to have just the bar over the 3, but remember, what is just 0.3 repeating? 1/3, right? So a lot of times students just think, well, you just copy whatever the fraction is. Be careful with that. It's not necessarily the case. This is 83 1/3%. All right, so just look a little bit before you jump. All right, so one more thing before we call it a day, or a few more things, if you will. What is 50% of 30? It's 15. Why? Because half of 30 is 15. Or translate that sentence into math. How do you translate the word what? X, right? Whenever you see the word what, it's always X, folks. How do you translate the word is? Equals. How do you translate 50%? Or 50 over 100, however you want to do it. But note, when you translate a percentage sign, the percentage sign should really be gone. Right? This is why you do this exercise, because it gives you how to do your basic percentage problems. Right? How do you translate of? Multiplication. How do you translate 30? 30. And so yes, what, which is x, when you take 0.5 times 30, x is 15. It's all just translating into math from English. So what is 0.1% of 100? How do you translate what? X equals, be careful with 0.1%. 0.1, but it's 0.1%, right? .001, right? Because 0.1%, got to move it 2 to the left. 1, 2. You got to get 2 zeros in there. Be careful, right? Here's our of multiplication. Here's our 100. 100. What's 0.001 times 100? 0.1. 0.1% of 100 is 1/10, right? All right, so now the reason why I want to do that is 5 is 50% of what? See, now when you start getting into this habit of translating the sentence, you won't run into that problem of saying, oh, well, just take half of 5. It's 2.5. Because now you're going to know better, right? You're going to say, I'm going to translate this crap. 5 equals 50%, which is 0.5 of times x. How am I going to get x by? Divide by a half. 5 divided by 0.5 gives you 10, and then put it back in and make sure that when you read it, it makes sense, right? 5 is 50% of 10, right? Because half of 10 is 5. We are good at multiplying, folks. We are bad at dividing. This is why I want you to translate this sort of thing so that you don't have to do any hard dividing without the special use of your calculator. All right. 10 is what percent of 50? So this will be the last one. Again, translate, right? 10 equals what percent? Just be careful. It is just x, but be careful, right? Because I want it as a percent of times 50. How do I get x by itself? Divide by the 50. Ten divided by 50 is 0.2. When you do this, folks, the what comes back as a decimal, not as a percent. You have to convert this 20%, okay? This equals 20%. So you have to make that last step, realizing that when you solve for x, you're solving for it like it's a math problem, right? Which means it's always going to be as its decimal representation. You have to make the conversion into a percentage, right? And again, put it back in and make sure it makes sense, right? 10 is 20% of 50. If you take 20% of 50, you're going to get 10. Always check to be sure. All right. That gets us at least a start on Chapter 6. We will get into more complicated things like percentage increases, percentage decreases on Wednesday. It's up there right now, so you should be able to get the Chapter 6 homework online if you need it. 2 through 92, the evens. This is a big assignment, folks. Don't wait to the last minute to do it, because it's big, and it's not trivial, right? There's lots and lots and lots of word problems. Next week. No. We haven't gotten through everything yet. We only got through about the first third of the chapter, right? We got some more to do. Joe, could you turn me off? You could probably do the first page. Let's put it that way. Sure.